When Bertie's brother renounced the throne, Bertie unexpectedly became king, tasked with leading a nation on the brink of World War II. Bertie, suffering from a debilitating stammer that brought him great discomfort and embarrassment, had always kept a low profile. However, his new role as king demanded public speaking, transforming his personal challenge into a matter of national significance. With the unwavering support of his spouse and the expertise of a speech therapist named Lionel Logue, Bertie made remarkable strides in improving his speech. His vulnerability became a source of strength, culminating in a powerful address to the nation during the war, where he overcame his stammer and spoke as King George VI. To improve his condition, Bertie had to embrace vulnerability. He needed to acknowledge his stammer and put himself in situations where he risked failure and embarrassment. This bold move led to profound personal growth, enabling him to accomplish feats he never imagined possible. In a world that celebrates strength, vulnerability is often stigmatized as a weakness. We hesitate to be vulnerable, fearing the judgment of others. But what if vulnerability is not a weakness but an act of courage? What if it is the key to reaching our goals, overcoming our fears, and forging genuine connections? This video delves into the transformative power of vulnerability and its priceless benefits. The ancient Chinese military general Sun Tzu wrote a manual called The Art of War, which outlines various strategies for warfare. One of his pieces of advice is, appear weak when you are strong, and strong when you are weak. From a strategic military perspective, this advice is sound, but it is also a form of deception. The latter part, to appear strong when you are weak, is especially common among people. We generally don't want to show weakness and prefer to appear stronger and better than we are. We fear failure because it makes us look inadequate. By doing so, we engage in deception, hiding our true selves. The idea of being vulnerable makes many people uncomfortable. They are often reluctant to show vulnerability because it may make them appear weak. In a sense, this is true. By being vulnerable, we dismantle the walls we've built around ourselves, our carefully crafted personas, and reveal aspects of ourselves that can be hurt. Our weaknesses become visible. Previously, our environment saw only our personas, such as the resilient and fearless provider and protector of his family, or the strong, independent businesswoman who doesn't need anyone for support, especially not a man. Likely, people liked and respected us for these traits. But the moment we drop those personas and reveal our true, complete selves, including our vulnerabilities, people see us differently. We are no longer as invincible as we once portrayed. We are not as fearless. In many ways, we are actually weak. Consider this. No matter how strong you believe yourself to be in terms of physique, charisma, or resources, you are still at the mercy of circumstances beyond your control. You might be a well-trained fighter capable of defeating almost anyone, but illness and injury are always looming. How strong are you when your strength relies on something that can be taken away in an instant? Recognizing our inherent vulnerability is not about diminishing our worth. It's about embracing the full spectrum of our humanity. True strength lies in acknowledging our weaknesses and finding courage in our authenticity. Most, if not all, people have fears and weaknesses. Yet we hesitate to reveal them. We fear that others might think less of us, lose respect, and lose faith in us if they see our vulnerabilities. They might be disconcerted by the idea that beneath our armor lies a human being who is afraid, insecure, and frail. They might not feel as safe with us anymore because we aren't the fearless action heroes they believe could protect them at all costs. Alternatively, they might lose respect for us because we aren't as internally strong as we appear to be. They might discover that we are susceptible to addiction, depression, or other struggles, and unable to solve these problems without support. Yet, it's in revealing these vulnerabilities that we find true strength. By showing our authentic selves, we foster genuine connections and create an environment where others feel safe to do the same. Embracing vulnerability allows us to grow and to support each other through our shared human experience. Unfortunately, there is truth in the notion that certain people, not all, frown upon weakness. Consequently, there's a social stigma around showing vulnerability, which is often interpreted as weakness. This stigma is particularly pronounced for men whom society generally expects to be strong, unemotional, and fearless. By showing weakness, men risk being labeled as not a real man or a pussy. Women may turn their backs on men who display vulnerability, perceiving them as unsuitable providers and protectors. This societal expectation results in many men maintaining facades of strength with their girlfriends or spouses out of fear of losing them, or at the very least, losing their respect. Unfortunately, this fear, based on much anecdotal evidence, is not entirely unfounded. However, we must challenge these societal norms and recognize that true strength lies in authenticity. By embracing and showing our vulnerabilities, we break down harmful stereotypes and pave the way for deeper, more meaningful connections. Acknowledging our humanity allows us to support each other better and fosters a culture where vulnerability is seen as a strength rather than a weakness. Hence, many online dating coaches offer advice to men such as never show weakness or always maintain frame. The problem with such advice is that it encourages men to adopt facades based on fear, specifically the fear of losing their partners if they reveal their true selves, frailties, emotions, and vulnerabilities. This approach leads to a continuous deception aimed at preventing others from thinking less of them. They appear strong when weak, as Sun Tzu advised. They are engaging in their own art of war, not against an enemy military, but against themselves and their immediate environment. By perpetuating these facades, men trap themselves in a cycle of inauthenticity. True strength and resilience come from acknowledging and embracing our vulnerabilities, not hiding them. Only by breaking free from these deceptive practices can men form genuine connections and build relationships based on mutual trust and understanding. The true art of living is not about constant warfare with oneself, but about finding harmony through honesty and vulnerability. However, by refusing to be vulnerable, men miss out on what could be the most significant catalyst for self-growth and genuine connection. How can we improve if we aren't willing to acknowledge our shortcomings? How can we become experts at something if we don't allow ourselves to be fools first? Being vulnerable indeed comes with risks, as we've previously discussed. These risks primarily involve how others perceive us and the fear of being seen as weak and inadequate. Yet true, meaningful human connection requires vulnerability. How can we connect with someone without revealing significant parts of who we are? To foster genuine connections, we must be willing to share our authentic selves, including our fears and weaknesses. This openness not only strengthens our relationships, but also facilitates personal growth. By embracing vulnerability, we allow ourselves to learn, adapt, and become better versions of ourselves. In doing so, we break free from the constraints of societal expectations and find true strength in our authenticity. So it's quite ironic when we think about it. We avoid being vulnerable because we're concerned with what people think about us, yet this avoidance prevents us from building actual, meaningful connections. We could ask ourselves the following question: what's more important? Is it the respect, affection, and high estimation of others based on deception, driven by our desire to meet societal standards and expectations? Or is it the genuine connection that comes from revealing who we truly are, including our frailties and weaknesses, even if it doesn't align with those standards and expectations? Many people place so much emphasis on the former that they sabotage their chances of achieving the latter. But is it really that important to please others with our facades? Isn't this whole act of deception to gain others' approval a waste of time? True fulfillment and authentic relationships come from being honest about who we are. By shedding our masks and embracing vulnerability, we create space for real connections and personal growth. Ultimately, the pursuit of genuine understanding and acceptance is far more valuable than maintaining a facade for the sake of superficial approval. Pessimist philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer believed that spending our lives seeking other people's approval is a fool's errand. He stated, "We should add very much to our happiness by a timely recognition of the simple truth that every man's chief and real existence is in his own skin and not in other people's opinions. And consequently, that the actual conditions of our personal life, health, temperament, capacity, income, wife, children, friends, home, are 100 times more important for our happiness than what other people are pleased to think of us. Otherwise, we shall be miserable. And if people insist that honor is dearer than life itself, What they really mean is that existence and well-being are as nothing compared with other people's opinions. Schopenhauer emphasizes that true happiness lies within ourselves, not in the opinions of others. Our well-being, relationships, and personal conditions are far more significant for our happiness than external validation. Prioritizing other people's opinions over our own authentic lives leads to misery. When people claim that honor is more valuable than life itself, they essentially argue that their existence and well-being are secondary to what others think of them. Schopenhauer is highlighting that many factors in our lives are more important than what others think of us. Things like genuine connections, our income, and how we spend our time. Yet we often chase a high place in others' estimation, even sacrificing the things that bring us true happiness for it. When it comes to vulnerability, we refuse to show it to gain approval. This may seem to work, but it also means sacrificing things that could genuinely make us happy and fulfilled. For instance, you can work hard to maintain the facade that allows you to sit at the cool kids' table. But the price you pay includes the constant fear of scrutiny and rejection if your facade cracks, the inability to express yourself in ways that don't align with the group's preferences, and the need to act according to the group's dictates. Is that really worth it? Choosing to be vulnerable allows us to form deeper connections and live more authentically. It means accepting the risk of rejection, but also opening the door to genuine acceptance and happiness. True fulfillment comes from embracing who we are, not from conforming to others' expectations. What would happen if you dropped the facade, were vulnerable, and showed the world your true preferences, interests, and goals? You might lose your spot at the cool kids table and even become an outcast, but you would then be free to pursue whatever you want and attract people who appreciate you for who you truly are, not for the facade you crafted. If that isn't a genuine connection with yourself and the world around you, then what is? The key to obtaining this authenticity is vulnerability. Author and professor Brené Brown, a leading expert on vulnerability, stated, "Our willingness to own and engage with our vulnerability determines the depth of our courage and the clarity of our purpose. The level to which we protect ourselves from being vulnerable is a measure of our fear and disconnection." By embracing vulnerability, we not only cultivate deeper connections, but also find the courage and clarity to pursue our true purpose. Shielding ourselves from vulnerability only serves to deepen our fears and our sense of disconnection. In essence, vulnerability is not a weakness, but a profound strength that allows us to live more fully and authentically. Refusing to be vulnerable disconnects us not only from the world around us, but also from ourselves. It often interferes with our personal development and holds us back from improvements, as we're too ashamed to admit our weaknesses, preventing us from addressing them. To become experts, we must be willing to be fools. This applies to socializing, giving presentations, driving a car, or learning any new skill. We must accept our initial inadequacies and be open to learning experiences. This requires vulnerability, acknowledging that we are not yet proficient and that we need to improve. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we engage in an act of courage. We let our guard down, tread unknown territory, and put ourselves in positions where we can fail, disappoint others, be laughed at, rejected, and so on. However, within this vulnerability lies the potential for immense self-growth. Embracing vulnerability means accepting the risk of failure and the possibility of growth. It enables us to connect more deeply with others and with ourselves, fostering an environment where genuine progress and development can occur. In vulnerability, we find the strength to evolve, learn, and ultimately become better versions of ourselves. As Brené Brown stated, we must walk into the arena, whatever it may be, a new relationship, an important meeting, our creative process, or a difficult family conversation, with courage and the willingness to engage. Rather than sitting on the sidelines and hurling judgment and advice, we must dare to show up and let ourselves be seen. This is vulnerability. This is daring greatly. Putting yourself in situations that make you vulnerable can lead to greater strength. Exposure to these situations increases confidence and helps you become more comfortable in them. For example, after the pandemic, I experienced a surge in anxiety in social situations in crowded places. I realized I had two options: avoid these situations or expose myself to them, putting myself in a vulnerable position where I would experience sensations of anxiety and overstimulation, and potentially appear weak because of it. However, I could only improve by putting myself out there and fully accepting what was happening. This realization became another reason for me to travel, which forced me to engage socially and be in crowded places. By embracing vulnerability and facing these challenging situations, I gradually became more comfortable and confident. This approach applies to many aspects of life. Vulnerability is not a weakness, but a path to growth and resilience. It enables us to connect deeply, learn profoundly, and live authentically. Another example of the power of vulnerability is dealing with trauma. The logic here is straightforward. You cannot improve something you're unwilling to acknowledge and engage with. Being vulnerable with a mental health professional about your difficulties coping with traumatic experiences can lead to addressing and dissolving them in healthy ways, resulting in a life less burdened by the demons of the past. So how does being vulnerable work? How do we pull this off? From what we've discussed so far, we can derive some tools to help us be more vulnerable. Firstly, consider self-acceptance. Look at your weaknesses and failures with compassion instead of shame, understanding that they are part of being human. If people judge us because of our vulnerabilities, that's their problem, not ours. When we radically accept who we are, what's left to be ashamed of? What's left to hide? Secondly, practice openness. Start small by sharing your thoughts and feelings with trusted friends or family members. Gradually extend this practice to broader contexts. The more you practice, the easier it becomes to be open and authentic. Thirdly, embrace courage. Remember that being vulnerable is an act of bravery. It requires stepping out of your comfort zone and facing uncertainty. Recognize that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. Lastly, seek support. Surround yourself with people who encourage your vulnerability and provide a safe space for you to express yourself. This support network can reinforce your efforts to be authentic and help you navigate the challenges of vulnerability. By integrating self-acceptance, openness, courage, and support into your life, you can cultivate the strength to be vulnerable. This vulnerability, in turn, fosters genuine connections, personal growth, and a deeper understanding of yourself and others. Secondly, I'd emphasize the importance of indifference, particularly towards other people's judgments and opinions that might prevent us from opening up. I've made a separate video about the power of indifference, which delves into this concept further. Thirdly, and I think this is essential, is the embrace of uncertainty. By entering the arena, we make ourselves particularly vulnerable to the whims of fate. We lay our lives in the hands of outside forces, things beyond our control. Making bold moves comes with dangers, but also with rewards. Embracing uncertainty makes it easier to fully engage with our goals, accepting the risk that things could turn completely sour. It's a paradoxical contract with unpredictability, an agreement that nothing is certain and all is subject to change. In conclusion, the path to vulnerability involves several key steps. 1. Self-acceptance. Embrace your weaknesses and failures with compassion, understanding they are part of being human. If others judge you, that's their problem, not yours. Radical self-acceptance leaves little room for shame or hiding. 2. Indifference. Cultivate indifference towards other people's judgments and opinions. This helps you open up and be authentic without fear of external validation. 3. Embrace uncertainty. Accept that life is unpredictable and that engaging with your goals involves risks. This acceptance allows you to fully participate in life, recognizing that both dangers and rewards are part of the journey. By integrating these principles, self-acceptance, indifference to others' opinions, and embracing uncertainty, you can harness the power of vulnerability. This approach not only strengthens your relationships and personal growth, but also leads to a more authentic and fulfilling life. So we fully immerse ourselves in relationships or friendships, risking betrayal and rejection. We dedicate ourselves entirely to our goals, risking failure and ridicule. Some will ask, what will happen if this goes wrong? But we could also ask, what will happen if this goes right? Yes, being vulnerable may have led to past hurts and could also lead to future ones. But does that mean we should shut the door forever, missing out on many life experiences? Embracing vulnerability means accepting both the potential for pain and the possibility of profound joy and growth. What do you think? Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please give us a like and a subscription as an encouragement for us to make more useful videos.